in my department, the Department of Musicology, University of Oslo, and some of my students have been here doing research and they come back with inspiration which has moved forward, and we are looking forward to several years of common projects now, both McGill, University of Oslo, and within various European Union projects. So that said, I should also say I'm truly humble doing this, because this is a new branch of musicology. Results are tentative. We are really breaking new ground in a certain way. So you should just bear with me that some of this may seem a bit loose, a bit sketchy, and I hope that you'll be very honest in your opinions when you ask me questions afterwards. So just look at the first slide here. It says Musical Gestures. It's a project that ended half a year ago, but the website is still active, and you can go there and find some useful software for motion analysis. You can download it for free, which runs together with the Max MSP Jitter software, both on Windows and Mac. And the second project, Sensing Music Medical Actions, we are starting up right now together with the Computer Science Department, which will be more closely focused on sensor technology. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about is basically this. I want to start out explaining a little bit the background, why I think that studying sound-related actions is a good idea. Then I'll show you briefly some of the stuff we have done, the types of sound-related actions, and also discuss some topics, features of sound-related actions. And then I'll turn to a topic called chunking, which you English-speaking people, of course, are very familiar with, but which is really quite essential, in my opinion, to advance knowledge about sound and movement. And a subset of that is a phenomenon called co-articulation, which has been ported more or less from linguistics, but which I think can have some very good sense, make good sense in music as well. And I'll finally tell you something about the challenges you see ahead. So, why are we doing this? Well, some very obvious reasons. First of all, sound is produced by human movement. Listeners move to music. And furthermore, the movements that listeners make, at least in settings where it's not taboo to move, like in the Philharmonic, I don't know, in Montreal, where you see people going like this in the Philharmonic, I love it, but in jazz clubs, rock concerts, people move. And they move walking down the street with their iPods and so on. And it is a testimony of personal involvement, which I think really needs to be studied, because it's a very visible, very obvious kind of engagement with music, which hasn't been given much attention, I think. But another point is that if we look closer at the movements that listeners are making, we can see that people who are totally amateurs, have no music education, can actually make some very interesting movements which attest to that maybe they have some tacit knowledge that has as of yet been untapped. But finally, summarizing all this, we believe that human movement is integral to music experience as such. And more specifically, because I'm a music theorist and composition, I was training composition, worked as a composer and music theorist in the old days. I believe that motion, human motion, can really provide some much needed reform and input to music theory. This is based on a large body of thought, which I like to summarize under the heading of motor theory of perception. Now, there are several variants of this theory, but to simplify things a little bit, it goes like this, applied to music. When we listen to sound, we like to think of sound as a continuous phenomenon along a timeline, unbroken silence. when we listen, the idea with motor theory is that we constantly have an internal sensation of motion, that we imagine musicians play when we don't see musicians. We imagine seeing musicians more or less. And also that we extract certain action units from what we hear. In linguistics, the point of the so-called motor theory of perception, which was actually put forward quite a long time ago in the 1960s, the suggestion was that both children in language acquisition and grown-ups, when they hear and comprehend language, they do so not just by doing let's say, sound-based analysis of whatever they hear, but they also couple that with the articulatory movements of the vocal tract, so that when a child learns the language, the child, of course, learns the appropriate motions of the vocal tract. And also, grown-ups, when we hear language, there is now a well-documented fact that motor areas of the brain are also put into motion. So, sounds action is not a new topic. I should say, together with my colleague at the University of Ghent in Belgium, I'm now in the process of editing a book on this topic. And there we have some very nice contributions about the history of study of music and movement. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Ref's Recital of Truslit, his theories of motion. It turns out that there have been quite a lot of attempts in the 20th century in particular, but which are not well known, and also, of course, they didn't have the favorable elements that we have today, which are listed here. Of course, advances in motion capture technologies, various sensors, video software for analysis, and also advances in the neurocognitive understanding of perception-action links. For instance, the just mentioned motor theory of perception, which is again being increasingly well supported by various types of brain imaging. But still we have considerable challenges of developing what I call a conceptual apparatus for sound-related actions. We really don't have a good vocabulary, and we really don't have a good set of typologies and so on. So let's start off by seeing a very famous example. Some of you know this.
This is a happy hour, my friend. Make your work a pleasure. Move with the rhythm.
Well, as you know, Chaplin was a great master of gestures, and he went about this in a very thorough manner. The rest of the movie was, of course, based on very minute studies of Hitler. This is not, as you can imagine, a spontaneous choreography. Actually, it was a vaudeville number that he had used several decades before. But the shooting of the scene was unbroken. And that's quite amazing. Not just one camera, bam, and no editing. Well, at any rate, we see spontaneously that music and Chaplin's action somehow belong together. And most of all, we see a synchrony of onset events. For instance, downbeats in the music are synchronized with certain postures and hand movements. And also the action trajectories, like the flurry of Thomas when applying the soap to the and the tutti course of shaking off the soap and so on. So, but the point is that we could very well have made a completely different choreography to the same music without really changing so much. So, what we end up with saying is that there is what in cognitive psychology now has been called affordance, meaning that something gives many possibilities. So, we like to use the term here, rich movement affordance of music and sound. And it's quite simply based on the fact that music has so many elements running at the same time, so that a listener may focus on certain parts and ignore other parts, or choose to move to certain parts, for instance, to follow the melodic line or to dance with the accompaniment or follow some drum fill or whatever. So, in other words, this Hungarian dance number 5 could easily have been adapted to, let's say, kitchen scene or whatever. But what's in the bottom of this, we still believe that there are some very basic human motion categories which are quite unambiguous, both in music and in movement, like hitting, stroking, sweeping, scraping, shaking, etc. Those are biomechanically quite distinct. So we started out this really as an extension of some other work, namely the phenomenological tradition of Pierre Schaeffer. And people are not always aware of this. They tend to maybe think that Schaeffer, with his message of the acousmatic listening, said that the body and the environment doesn't exist. You are supposed to focus only on the sound. But if you go a bit closer into the Traité des objets musicaux and the examples, we find out that actually his metaphors, his vocabulary is very much attached to motion. So he has this typology of different sonic objects, where the main categories are actually impulsive, sustained, and iterative. And biomechanically, those three categories are actually very distinct, because an impulsive movement, sometimes also referred to as vocalistic movement in the movement literature, means that you have a sudden exertion and then you just bounce back. Whereas a sustained effort is a continuous energy transfer. And the third category, iterative, is a kind of in-between, meaning that, for instance, you have a shake like this, or a rapid tremolo on a string instrument, or a drum roll. There are clear thresholds, what sometimes referred to as phase transitions, between the continuous and impulsive and iterative movement. So let's hear some examples first, and impulsive sound. Just one time. And then a sustain. And then a iterative. Actually, Schaeffer had also categories for smaller movements. One is grain, or I translate it as grain in English, meaning that you have a very small bouncing of a rough surface, something like this. Okay, as you can encounter in a double bass, where actually, of course, the gripping and the slipping of the string is a continuous series of impulses, if you like. He has another concept in French, allure, which has sometimes been translated as motion, which means slower types of fluctuations like this. And also, Schaeffer tried to see that these categories can actually go across different instruments and different timbres, like in this case.
Mais on a déjà remarqué qu'un contrebasson dans le grave comporte aussi un entretien itératif. Et qu'il y a des hybrides où s'enchaînent sans discontinuité des entretiens de frottement et d'itération.
This is now in 2008, I would say, based on theories of ecological knowledge of sound features, and there is actually a huge body of research on this. I'd like to mention one pioneering work by Fried on hardness of mallets and Stevens' work, and also this European Union project on this phonic object, this book by Recital and Fontana, which you can, by the way, download for free on the web. Which shows very clearly that people have very good knowledge of sound sources. Whereas knowledge of sound producing actions is a bit less well studied. We have done some studies, but there are others as well. I should also mention a very interesting book by Clara, Ways of Listening, where he tries to attach musical listening to this psychological way of thinking, saying essentially that when we listen to music, we also at the same time listen to body actions, like we are trying to say in our project. So we have a convergence, I think, from several different domains to suggest that multimodal elements are at work. And also on a lower level, we have evidence of hardwired couplings, that the auditory and motor areas of the brain are very closely linked. We have studies in different areas, for instance on entrainment and rhythmicity in rehabilitation, where it has been documented quite clearly how people spontaneously respond to rhythm. In a more compositional way, there is this interesting book, introspective study by Dennis Sudnow, Ways of the Hand from 1978, where he tried to show how jazz improvisation is really a matter of having hand movements. In a more empirical way, these studies, Hausen and Knusche and Svanik and Altenmüller, they show quite clearly that people tend to mobilize motor areas in the brain when they listen to music. So the motor theory of perception means that we have a constant mental simulation and also imitation of the actions of others. And actually also that there is a covert imitation going on. In a more general case, when two people are talking, the one who is listening will tend to imitate the actions of the one who is talking covertly. If we are talking together and I start to imitate the actions of the one I'm talking with, I'm considered nuts. Because that's not appropriate social behavior. But this idea of imitation covers actually that. So, well, there's a whole lot of material here. I'll just go on and say there are some really lucid text. French neuroscientist Alain Berthoz wrote a very influential book for me, at least 1997, The Sens du Mouvement. It's now translated in English. Vittorio Gallese from this Italian group of neurophysiologists who have been accredited with discovering the so-called mirror neurons, have now coupled up with Josh Lakoff, who is from a completely different camp, namely from cognitive linguistics. And they have written a very nice paper on the body basis or even abstract thinking. And Gallese is also a philosopher, and he has given a very nice reinterpretation of phenomenological philosophy in terms of movement. So, as a general point, what we end up with is actually not so radically new, but still, in terms of music theory, I think it does have a very clear message, namely that there is what's called the perception action side of the work. I try to schematically say, it's my own hand and the sound waves, and I hear it, and it goes to my brain, and I map that somehow to my hands. So, a little digression. I have been very critical of a whole lot of music theory for the greater part of my run of life, I would say. It doesn't, it is not capable of accounting for so much, and I think that the real problem is notation. That the finger is pointed at notation, for good and bad. That notation has been, of course, of extraordinary importance in Western music, but something has gone wrong in that there has grown up this huge body of music theory, which is not based on perceived sound, which is sometimes even based on very abstract numerical relationships. And there isn't a good reasoning around this. How are notational symbols to be understood in music theory? It's just an issue that's largely undebated. So our proposal is, of course, music based on perceived and continuous sounds, which many people are working on. For instance, here, Stephen has worked on this for decades, and others as well, but the point is that actions could form a kind of link between continuous complex sounds and more simple symbols. For instance, if I notate a tam-tam, fortissimo, it means that I hit the tam-tam. And of course, the acoustic result of hitting a tam-tam is just extraordinarily complex, a cloud of white noise, but the act of hitting it is a kind of focal point. So the point of introducing actions is then to reform music theory and try to think about music as more shapes of movement, shapes and energy and geometry and effort. I have different metaphors for that. So when we start looking at the motor components in music, we are stuck with a problem, namely that we are amateurs in the field. We are not really trained in motor theory, and I must say I've read quite a lot, and I discovered that if music theory is full of disagreement, motor control is even worse. There are two main camps, those who proclaim motor programs, that things are planned in advance, and the others that claim that it's more a dynamical system. Well, anyway, what we have extracted is that there is now a consensus that we have motor programs and overview of what's going to happen next. We also have a very important concept of motor equivalence, meaning that I can play a tune on the piano with my left hand. If I was disabled, I could perhaps play the tune with a pencil between my toes. And this means that it's possible to go from one set of detectors, let's say the hand to the mouth, or the other way around. And also that there are a number of other elements of motor theory which really is determining for music theory. So in sum, I think that what we are heading against now is a more complementary approach to music cognition and music theory, which is not really in competition with the excellent work that has been done, but more a supplement and bringing in this action perspective. So again, this embodied cognition is this incessant simulation of actions. And what we were interested in initially was to ask people who do not have formal musical training, what have they then picked up of motor information from just being alive and observing decisions? So we have done some studies of people playing ear instruments for the simple reason that they don't have the threshold of actually being able to play as such, but that they could perhaps identify some of the movements. So I just want to show you an example that has not been made by us, but it's actually from the World Championship in air guitar playing in Finland last year. So you know what this is about.
My main elements would be bass kick scratch, where it's or you know you could do different types of ways of you know what I mean, flip it like that, and then like when you were saying with the words with the and then you maybe put it together. 1, 2, 1, 2.
It was from Norwegian television, in case you wonder what this There is this flexibility of effectors, as they are called. In the gesture research camp, in linguistics, there is a huge literature now. I just listed up some of the main people here because it might be interesting for you to have a closer look at it. Ken, McNeil, Kita, Golden Meadow, and so on. Where initially the point of departure for these people was to look at gestures as a supplement to language. Okay? But then it turned out that, it wasn't just a theatrical supplement. How come that when people are walking down the street talking on the phone that they gesticulate? They're not doing that for someone else. They're doing it for themselves. So some other theories have been added to this. For instance, speech facilitating gestures and even thought facilitating gestures. And Golden Meadow has this very nice book called How Hands Help You Think, meaning that actually the motor phenomenon feeds back on the more structured linguistical parts. Very interesting paper by Michael Ardit, Language Within Our Graph, which traces from an evolutionary perspective the coupling of the linguistic abilities with animals. Well, at the Recital project, we have coined this phrase manual rendering of sound, meaning that we are looking at how we can, by this principle of motor equivalence, how can we, with new musical instruments, actually make a transfer from one set of instruments and movements to another. So here you can see some of the gadgets that we are working on now, and we are hoping to continue, in particular, cooperation with Michael here on developing new interfaces. It's amazing now together with the computer science department at home, we have this possibility of making molded silicon and embed them with many sensors. So one goal is to see how far can we get with a speaking ball that we can squeeze, saying that squeezing is equivalent to the diaphragm, and that the shape of the ball that we squeeze should somehow replicate the rotation. Okay, so now let's go on to looking at some types of sound-related actions. It's not clear what's what in this field. It's hotly debated, and this excellent CD-ROM I recommend very much by Marcelo and Marc Partier, and also the book that I mentioned that I'm editing with Mark Lehmann, where we really have a considerable challenge of trying to make some sense of the different uses. In particular, the word gesture is quite problematic. But in the big picture, I think we can distinguish between sound-producing gestures and sound-accompanying gestures, although the lines are quite blurred. So, if we now consider sound-producing gestures, it's quite clear we have what could be called excitatory gestures, for instance, hitting a drum, hitting a key on a piano, bowing, and so on. And we have modulatory gestures, for instance, the left hand making a vibrato. We have selection gestures, taking the sordine and putting on the strings, or pulling out the stops on an organ. We have facilitating gestures, meaning that we move our elbow playing piano in order to have the finger in the best position. We have ancillary gestures, meaning exactly what Marcelo Wannerly has studied now intensely for several years. For instance, the movement of the clarinet in performance. And we have communicative gestures, meaning both in an ensemble when you give the upbeat to your fellow musicians, or when a guitarist exaggerates the movements in order to impress the audience or whatever. So there are not so very clear boundaries. I want to just show a short clip by Glenn Wood playing Weber Variations, Opus 27. If you know this piece, the last movement is notated actually with crisscrossing hands from Weber's side, and Wood does it. so sure of what's necessary and what's unnecessary for producing sound. I would think that rhetorically the whole gestural act that he's doing is, of course, directly influencing the way he's performing. But alternatively, you could see another case who wouldn't do that. So we have the fact that these sound-related gestures are actually non-arbitrary and they're quite robust. As Marcelo has shown, if you ask a clarinetist to play the same piece with a year's interval between, you can actually map point by point the movement of the clarinet in the interval of a year, and that's quite extraordinary. So it seems quite well documented that it's not arbitrary, it's actually very solid. Another point is that these cognitive and theatrical gestures have a clear impact on listeners. Jane Davidson has done some very important work on this. So let's quickly turn to what we call sound accompanying gestures like dancing, walking, marching, gesticulating, tracing, or to add entirely new movement trajectories to the sound, or even kind of emotive gestures. All this may be mixed together actually with sound producing gestures. I want to show you just a short clip from the diary of Bridget Jones, where she's miming to a playback. She isn't producing any sound, but the interesting point is how she oscillates or shifts between miming, sound production, and doing something. So, next point, what knowledge of sound production producing actions do listeners with different competence have? We know and we suspect that there was quite a lot of knowledge about it. So we did a whole series of, we call it observation studies. I mean, we are cheating because we are not really so well qualified in experimental psychology. Rather, to say the truth, we are not qualified at all. So we call this observation studies. We just wanted to find out, and it would be very nice in the future if we could collaborate with people who are more clever at doing this, a bit more systematically. But I just wanted to show you now a montage of 3 pianists. What you're going to see is, from the right is a professor of piano, a music student, and a person who claimed to be tone deaf. Okay? And they are trying to play air piano to the opening of Schiavin's 50th piano sonata. Stuff like that we could see quite clearly, and then we tried to make this a bit more specific and formalized, and we came across a very interesting paper by Rolf Inge Godoy called Goal-Directed Imitation, Studies of children, how they would imitate adults. And it turned out that the goals were very clearly imitated. For instance, if an adult went like this, the child might respond like this. Okay, the goal was the same, but the trajectory was different. And we could see the same stuff actually in this kind of air instrument playing as well. So what we did was to do a whole lot of keyframe chopping up and annotations, and we did some evaluation of correspondences and so on. So this has been published. If you're interested, you can have a look at it. But what it turned out to summarize this is that on the course level, even the so-called tone-deaf person would follow the music quite well in terms of pitch space, onsets, and dynamics. But in terms of detail, of course, the professionals were better. So then we went on to something else we called sound tracing. We wanted to see if we played small fragments of sound and asked listeners to just quickly draw the gesture that they associated with the sound, what would happen there. So we had it set up with a vacuum tablet, and they heard the sound and they were asked to immediately draw the sound. They were given no bit of and we had tailored a series of 50 different sounds, quite short ones. And they had exactly the same time as the sound to play to just write the gesture. And as you can see, we tried from very simple sounds, just a pitch contour, onto quite complex sounds where we have this kind of wow, chromatic transitions, and that caused a lot of frustration because they didn't know how to draw that on the two-dimensional surface measure. So let's have a look at some. Third type of studies, free spontaneous gestures to music. In this case, we used professional dancers. And we videotaped the initial spontaneous reaction to what they do. One thing that came as a suspicion was that these people are so clever at spontaneously moving, so maybe they would just use cliches they had learned previously. But at any rate, we got some quite interesting results, and I just want to show you one of those where we have used various processing in the software that I mentioned, so we can see the trajectories as a train, a kind of short-term memory simulation. Clara, he has a very detailed annotation for that. And it turns out again that through hundreds of different short examples like this, the moment the music is, let's say, has just one or two dimensions, the results are very similar. But the moment they get more complex and timbre changes, they tend to become more diverse. Another point is that actually, if you look at music, you can look at different velocities, and I talk about low pass, high pass filter. For instance, if I'm playing the piano like this, I can say that the figure movements are the high frequency components, whereas the wrist is the low frequency component. And I can separate that. And when we see people move to music, sometimes they put on a certain frequency region, so to speak, in music. But all this boils down to, in order to progress here, we have to go into shorter chunks. And that's why we shall come to the topic. But first of all, I just want to say some more about features of sound-related actions. Because, of course, we can't speak about global features, global correspondences, looking at, let's say, a 3-minute dance of someone moving to music. And if we really want to understand better, we have to go into the local stuff. So, but first of all, what tools do we have for this kind of global studies? Well, we have something called perceptual motion, which is really quite coarse and quite primitive, meaning that there is a calculation being done from the total number of pixels that's moving in an image. And if you remember the 3 air piano pianists, there was this black and white thing underneath with a square bounding box that would contract and expand. That was the quantity of motion measurement. But still, it's quite interesting because for comparison here, we have put a waveform underneath And subject E is the professional pianist. Subject A is the amateur. You can see that she was quite timid, didn't move much. But in between, you can definitely pick out some resemblances. Now, this was done 4 years ago using the so-called IceWeb software, which some of you probably are familiar with. We have developed new quantity of motion modules in our software, which I think can be more useful now. An invention of another former PhD student of mine who has been here, Alexander Rensenes. This was called motion grams, which can also be quite interesting to give this kind of macroscopic images. Actually, it's very simple what he has done here. I should show you that first. If you have an image, a video frame, like up in the left corner, what you do is that you just collapse everything into one single pixel line. So that for each frame, you get one pixel line with pixels up towards that axis. And frame by frame, you advance, and then you get, for the vertical, you get that one, horizontal, you get that one. So actually, what this shows is a movement pattern, which is a fairly good index of activity. Actually, it has been used by the Faculty of Medicine. Again, multidisciplinarity is very difficult, and when we can offer the Faculty of Medicine our software, they can offer us something in return. So this is a rat, which has been studied, and it's not a simple rat, it's a genetically figured or genetically engineered rat who is born, poor creature, is born with attention deficit syndrome. It just moves around like crazy. And the motion gram underneath that is of course, based on hours and hours of rat observation. Also motion capture, which many of you here at Recital are familiar with, can give very nice global images of movement. But let's look now at the more local features of trajectory images. Yes, the idea is, as I'm trying to show with or indicate with the examples of Pierre Schaeffer, very simple sound shapes, and see how they can be reflected in sound. We haven't gotten so far with this line of work, but again, various video processing can actually give some intuitive image in a sense, a kind of short-term memory image showing the trajectories. And for instance here, you can see the excerpt I showed you previously. It's from a wind quintet by Imitation, where this dancer actually, to the sustained sound, went like this. So, our conclusion is that the effort image is very well reflecting the sustained sound. Another dancer will go like this. Also reflect the effort image well, but the geometries are different. So, the idea is that features may be conceptualized as shapes, as pitch contours, textural rhythmical chunks, timbre shapes, and so on. And again, returning to Schaeffer, that was precisely what he ended up with in his typology and morphology of musical objects. So I just want to play some short examples so you know what this is about.
Ainsi, combinant entretien soutenu et intonation fixe, nous pourrons rapprocher puis, toujours avec entretien soutenu, des intonations variables puis, sans entretien, des impulsions fixes en intonation et enfin des impulsions variables en intonation.
Some conceptual apparatus for talking about movement-inducing cues in sound, movement-inducing features. So the idea with Chatel's work 40 years ago was to have a top-down kind of approach where you start off with a chunk and then you differentiate as many as possible features within the chunk. It looks more complicated than it actually is. This is the so-called the summarizing table from this work. Again, this is something that you can actually now get an English translation. A colleague of ours, John Back at Middlesex University, has translated some of this to English. So we have some other interesting projects. Stephen and I were talking about our friends in Marseille at the NIC. We have something called Imitation, which is quite interesting. It's not very systematic and so on, but it's actually based on movement shapes like this. Then it's smaller in Milan and the spectral morphology. People who work in electronic music are familiar with that. And of course, the mentioned solid object project is quite interesting. But next question then, how does chunking actually work? Good question. I don't have so very many clear answers, but I can show you some of our ideas. Chatel had this idea of articulation appui, stress articulation, meaning the shift between vowels and consonants. So it's a qualitative discontinuity. That might work in some cases, but in case when you have very many qualitative discontinuities in rapid succession, it doesn't work so well. So posed as a general question, look at say that you have a continuous flux or something, be that visual or auditory or proprioceptive. The question is there a continuous updating or awareness of what's happening, or is it chunk by chunk, or do we have simultaneously different velocities? Actually, it's a very enigmatic issue, and it has been discussed for more than 100 years. Husserl, phenomenologist, had very clear ideas on this. William James had this idea of the speculous present, some of you may know that. And lastly now, Daniel Stern came out with a book called The Present Moment, which is very interesting, exactly about this same question. But Husserl had a very clear answer, saying that perception and reasoning has to proceed by points, discontinuously, point by Nahpoints, in German, Jetzt-Punkte. Because if we are continuously submerged in the flux of things, we cannot know anything at all. You have to somehow step out and say, that was it, and that was it, and that was it. And these Nahpoints are then considered along a timeline like this. This is an adaptation of a sketch made by Husserl in 1897, so more than 100 years ago. Meaning that the sensation of now is composite, that you carry with resonance, let's say, of something you just heard or saw, and you also have anticipation of the future. Now, why is this important for music and movement? I'll come to that in a moment. I just want to say that similar ideas are suggested by some neuroscientists. This is Ad Couple, Varela, who unfortunately passed away some years back. Engel and his colleagues in Hamburg. Basically, now I'm on thin ice, I'm not a neurophysiologist, but the idea is that we have a succession of cognitive present moments, which has actually correlated in brain activity. They look at phase coherence and they say that these different frequency areas of frequency regions of brain activity tend to show that at certain points you have this flash of coherence, which they believe can be correlated to points where people take decisions for when a gestalt foreground background flips around. So, but there's also some other stuff, classical work on short-term memories. There's a short-term memory range, is about 5 seconds, and also this large group by Schleitman here on human action tends to give histograms like this, where clearly we see that there's a peak between 2 and 3 seconds for the mean duration of actions. And the other can be in motor control. There has been a long and very intensive debate again for 100 years actually, between those who say that movement is pre-programmed and those that it has to be pre-planned because otherwise it will be too slow. Very nice paper by Rosenbaum et al., which is entitled National's Legacy, I believe, or something like that, where it takes up the point saying that we have to proceed by stations onwards. So the point in mentioning all this now is to say that the chunk level in musical sound is extremely important. And maybe we have been mistaken in assuming large scale forms. Very interesting paper by Anton and Grano showing how if you take a Mozart sonata and chop it up into pieces and put it together in a scrambled order, many people, even professional musicians, will say, ah, nice piece. And lo and behold, some professional musicians said even the scrambled version was better than Mozart's original. So, but all this points in the direction of saying, well, we should be a bit skeptical about this large-scale form thing. For instance, well, I don't wish to say something very negative, but if you consider Schenkerian theory, who says that you have a routine lasting for, let's say, 10 minutes, how well that's grounded in perceptual patterns and open question. So, well, again, returning to Snyder's excellent book, we have these different time scales, and there is this region roughly between 8 seconds and down, well, it goes down to 1/16th of a second. But of course, we are talking about very approximate time scales. So, what happens then if we have very long action or sound chunks? Well, Huckel, he suggests that in that case, what happens is that we flip around like in a Gestalt program ground figure, or that we wander in and out. So just listen to this excerpt from an electronic piece of music called Solitaire by Norwegian composer. It lasts for 25 seconds, and try to observe how your attention wanders or is fixed. It's her reaction when she's being fired, and listen to the music that goes with it. The time dimensions that are way outside this chunk size that we are looking for in action and sound. So our model is that we have 3 different sizes here. The sub-chunk level below 0.5 seconds. And these time limitations are very approximate. They are also dependent upon context. But we have the chunk level, which is, as I try to build up now, to say that the normal human action duration range is between 0.5 and 5 seconds. And then we have the supra-chunk level of concatenations of several chunks. So if we want to study sound and action, I think we better accept this and focus on that medium level kind of actions and sounds. That doesn't mean that narrativity and so on cannot exist. And I want to play for you a scene from a really bad movie, but the scene is so bad. It's Jerry Lewis, a film called The Errand Boy from 1963. The point is that he's an errand boy, and he's not supposed to be, or he's in the boardroom, he's supposed to just turn finally to next topic, what's called co-articulation. Because co-articulation is something that's quite solidly based in both biophysics, biomechanics, and in motor control. And I think it fits very nicely with this idea of sound action. So what is co-articulation? Well, co-articulation is the fusion. This is my definition more or less adapted from this book by David Rosenbaum on human motor control. Fusion of micro-level actions and sounds into meso-level or mid-level holistically experienced chunks of actions and sounds, entailing a contextual smearing of the micro-level elements. So if I'm going to grasp this bottle, I open my hand, actually on the way to the bottle. It would be ridiculous if I went like this. And it's well known in speech, as you shall see now, but the advantage is that it can account for these anticipatory movements in music, as well as how the recent time sound in these short chunks. In other words, that time in a sense goes backwards and forwards. So we have this in everyday tasks, like I just explained by reaching and grasping. It's well known in animation, in facial movement simulation. It's known in finger spelling, actually, well, not sign language, but finger spelling, that you make letters with the fingers that in a fast context they tend to reblur. In music, there have been some studies, and I'll show you some of them, but unfortunately it's a new territory, and I hope we can have more studies there. In speech, in linguistics, it's very much studied, and the classic book is this Podcast and Bullet from 1999 called co-articulation. So a short example here in English. For example, suppose you say the word happy. Before you say anything, you will move your tongue into a position for A. Then while you are saying H, it will sound a bit like A. While you are saying A, you will also be closing your lips for PP. While your lips are together for PP, you will be moving your tongue to where you need it for Y. Finally, while you are saying Y, you will be opening your lips after PP. The whole word usually be uttered in less than half a second. And co-articulation, of course, is what makes most other things learning foreign languages quite difficult, because it's also sometimes called continuous speech. So it means that in music, that otherwise similar events like tones are embedded into a context, and that past events in articulation, for instance in speech, that when you are pronouncing one syllable, your mouth instantly, instantaneously go to a new position. You have a sort of transition between it. And also the other way around, that you are pronouncing one sound, but you are already starting to prepare the next one. So in other words, it seems to be a biomechanical necessity, there seems to be a motor control necessity. In other words, both the muscles and all that, but it's also thinking about the movement. Actually, it can be modeled as what's called a mass spring phenomenon, in that you, this is hit a tuning fork, and that it resonates for a certain while, and say you hit another tuning fork, and in the vocal apparatus, that you have this tissue that continues to move even when they're not supposed to. And this has consequences for perception. So in music, there is this classic study by Inge from 1997. But it's not particularly advanced, so to speak, because they talk about the placement of the thumb underneath the fingers. A bit more advanced, could say, is the next one on string left-hand position playing. Very interesting study is the one by Sophia Dahl on drumming, where she shows that actually this varies quite a bit, but in some cases, some drummers start to prepare an accented stroke way before actually hitting. So this is a study of drummers hitting 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. And it shows that some start already 3 hits before to prepare the downbeat. In piano playing, it's observed all the time, so we could have a look here at playing opening of third movement of the Sonata. Physiologically, of course, it would be quite hazardous to the health to do it differently. The point is that it is both perceptual and biomechanical. It's notated as 3/8, but it sounds like 6/8. And it's embedded, of course, into the composition from beta on the side, but it's embedded into the co-articulated rhythmical tonic. So, co-articulation has a perceptual effects on creating cohesion. I want to show you briefly some other examples, both artificial and natural. First, a very artificial one made with the diphone software, actually by Philippe across the street. It's an artificial transition from a bell to an alt horn and back again. So the point is that this entire chunk is perceived as one trajectory. Actually, we can do the same with a source filter processing of, let's say, a trumpet tone like this. So there is a chromatic change. Let's have a more musical example. Giardino Armonico playing Winter from Four Seasons by Godøy. Sounds almost like using some more pedal, but they're probably just moving the bow. Another point, I mentioned mass spring modeling of articulation. It means that in this case, the example I'm going to play, you heard it before. There is multiple excitation where there is no damping, so it builds up, and I would consider that also a case of articulation. So another point, the samplers are hopeless as instruments because they cannot do co-articulation, simple as that. Also in electroacoustic music, you can hear objects like this, Chopin and the idea of the object opposite, where we now hear two components, first separately and then fused into a co-articulatory chunk. Again, this very nice paper by Rosenbaum et al. 2007, with the nationalist name basic, which has inspired my thinking, or rather, I was thinking of key frames before that, and it'd be very useful to see that as the goal points of co-articulated motion. So, well known from caricatures, of course, and from comic strips. The point is that these goal points will then be salient points in music, and also the goal point of an action. So you have ideally a fusion of the goal of reaching out and back again to equilibrium, which is quite well known in the suggestion research that I briefly mentioned earlier. So it can account for some stuff which has been difficult to account for in both movement science, I think, and in related musical thinking, namely how you go about when you have these kinds of motion, which are more sinusoidal, that you don't have very clear at times. It seems like it's continuous motion. If you understand that as a series of overlapping chunks that really are aiming for a goal point, it makes sense. Actually, it has been shown that people who are asked to give downbeats to sinusoidal motion tend to agree quite well that they say, in spite of a continuous change in curve, they peak out at a certain point. So this is what we are actually working on now, and I'm trying to advance this both in mathematical modeling, which I'm not, again, really good enough to do, but I'm hoping for some help. The point is that with this overlap, we can look at it also as I said, a mass spring model of multiple excitation, that you have, like the bell example, you have hitting there and it resonates continuously into the next hit and so on. So, yes, I should end now soon. It's not an entirely new idea. I should just mention that actually in phonetics, linguistics, they have had a similar idea going this 10 years back, saying that exactly in the case of co-articulation, the vocal tract has certain goal points, and then you have trajectories to these goal points and back again. And these trajectories may overlap so that you have a smearing, which is the very typical point of co-articulation and smearing, and yet you have intelligibility in spite of this smearing. So that's what we are doing now. This is Alexander wearing a rather complicated outfit with electromagnetic sensors and accelerometers. We have vast amounts of data, which needs processing in MATLAB. But what we are looking for is precisely this, that in the moment of the prefix to a goal point and the suffix after a goal point, we believe that it should be detectable as an acceleration to a certain point, and then you have to turn and so on. So we have a lot of work to do. So finally, I think I've spoken too long. I see a challenge here to summarize all this is really related to music theory. That was my personal background, and I think that introducing action, the notion of sound action couplings into music theory could do music theory a whole lot of good. To be specific, the rhythmic textural patterns, as I tried to show, these cyclical patterns a la Clara and Justin London also, could be accounted for maybe as co-articulated chunks. Timbre contours, as is well known, that the attack segment and the sustain segment mutually influence each other in auditory perception. Again, the idea of seeing a singular sound as with all these different stages of the envelope and also, mind you, transients underneath as we go along. All this fits quite nicely, I think, with the idea of articulation. And so there's melodic contours, and I would even include what we call tone semantic and modal features, in that the shape of, let's say, a sequence of tones, at some stage I would suspect that it would be perceived more instantaneously than just as a sequence of So again, music as strict sound actions. We have a long way to go. We need insight from neurocognitive research on perception action links. We need better understanding, in particular, of how anticipation works in action. We need a better conceptual apparatus. We need to have more information about the relationship between what we can see and what we cannot see, covert kinematics and covert dynamics. And also there is a discrepancy between what people feel and what can be measured. We need better motion capture technology all the time, motion capture data analysis. We need to work on biomechanical modeling and simulation. And also, I think we need better tools in sound analysis and synthesis. There are a lot of details, for instance, this grain quality, which really requires better time frequency resolution for analysis and resynthesis. So, in conclusion, I think that I just want to come back to this, saying that continuous sound evokes action. So, thank you.